Hello, everybody, and welcome to Warrior Goddess Wednesday. And today we're going to do a big focus on my favorite moon goddesses, and that is exactly why I am dressed up as Miss Sailor Moon tonight, because Sailor Moon does derive a lot of its cosmology, its mythology from astrology, and so it has been a big way of how I've actually learned astrology, full disclosure. But tonight's going to be a special night because we're going to not only talk about astrology specifically, but rather about the symbology behind the moon and the moon goddess, and how this relates personally from a perspective of Mayari, the moon goddess of the Philippines, and from the Philippine pantheon of the gods. And so, fun fact, I am half Filipino, my mom is Filipino, and so through looking at my own ancestry, it's been really fun to kind of see where a lot of these myths, a lot of these sacred stories have some interplay in my own ancestry. My father's South African, so I will take a look into some African goddesses next in terms of it coming of that being the case as well. We're going to probably touch on some of the moon goddesses from that part of the world though as well this evening, because we're going to take a look at all of the moon goddesses. So no matter where you're from, whatever background you're from, you probably have a moon goddess representation. And so especially if you are a Cancer or someone who has a lot of Cancer placements and feels very lunar and tied to the moon, this presentation will probably give you a lot of insight as to the stories behind what make up what the moon means in mythos. And by looking at those stories, those parables, you can kind of derive like what it actually means. So before I get into all of the fun details, we're going to start with Mayari first and her story and how the Philippine myth of, well, we'll get into that. The twin mythology where the sun and moon are brother and sisters and twins is a common thing. We'll get into that in just a second. Let's go here first. So as you can see, we've got the chart of the everlasting now, and let me just see if I can make it just a tad bigger. If you want to get your own birth chart, you can use this calculator on my site. I will drop a link as well. All right, so this is the chart of the now. We are currently in Sagittarius season, and you see here right now we have the sun and Mars in the same sign of Sagittarius. I have this aspect in my chart in a different sign, but I look at this as the sun being the captain of your soul and Mars being your first in command, your soul, your general. So the drive to get stuff done, and then the sun being the fuel to get your soul mission's purpose done, and the captain of like kind of like marshaling all of these different things that have to go on within you for you to do what it is you came to do here in this existence. And where does the moon sit with all of that? The moon sits right here in Libra. She's in Libra right now. Libra is ruled by Venus, but it is a masculine sign. It is an air sign. So the moon being here, emotions are tied to the arts. I find that Moon and Libra people will have an affinity or that emotional side that's tied to things of beauty, fairness, justice. Your emotions will be very tied to playing fair and the justice behind all things. And that's not a bad thing. It's just sometimes if one can be a little bit too rigid in what it means to play fair, and also, there's just like perspectives and things like that. So I think what I will be doing going forward too is I did just wrapped up the latest Truth, Beauty, Freedom, and Love show, and that is going to be live on Spotify and Rumble on Friday, the full episode, and we'll have like an abridged version available on YouTube. But in it, we go through our top 5 character inspirations, and our number 4, which I'm releasing as a teaser tomorrow, is, spoiler alert, Captain Planet and Captain America. And so this idea of being a captain, right, and the captain of a ship, mother ship, Earth being a big spaceship that we are a captain of, and in our own lives playing out in this game of life, our sun gives us some intel in terms of the fuel behind what we're doing here in the first place. Whereas your moon is more of the hidden emotional side, your inner child, your inner mother. It's like other things are involved with your moon sign as well, right? I can link to my presentation where it talks about how if you're born on like right now, we're in a waning moon phase. So we're heading towards a new moon and for solstice, and which is the darkest night of the year, right? And so as the moon becomes like her darker self, there's just certain actions that you probably want to be taken. It's less powerful to do a manifestation spell in a waning phase. You would probably want to do that in a waxing phase when things are growing towards fulfillment. And same thing goes with doing full moon magic or new moon magic, is that those tend to be more brief moments in time. So just be aware of what you're trying to manifest in those timings, and just to have it be the most powerful or the best it can be. There are no rules. You can't do things wrong. That's only really up to you. So other things to look at in the chart of the moment, let's look at what the moon is doing. Let's aspects of the moon. Quick little summary of the cosmos at hand right now. We have the sun in Sagittarius at 14 degrees. The moon is 5 degrees Libra. Mercury is in Capricorn. Venus is in Scorpio. Ooh, this is spicy. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Mars is in Sagittarius, in the same sign as the sun. Jupiter is in Taurus. Saturn is in Pisces, just 1 degree Pisces. This is a really intense position as well. Uranus is in Taurus. Neptune is in Pisces. Pluto is in Capricorn. The North Node is in Aries. Chiron is also in Aries. The ascendant, based on when I ran this chart, is in Virgo, and the midheaven is in Taurus. Now let's look at, there's a grand trine with an Earth. So we've got a Mercury, well, I wouldn't consider this too much because this is very much telling, if you were born at this exact moment, that would make a little bit more sense. And this is why also, if you look at any kind of chart, it's important for timing, because this ascendant lines up the rest of your chart. I wanted to look at if there was anything I knew the moon was making something here. So the moon right here is making a yod, which is the fingerprint of God or the fingerprint of destiny, where you have an apex point where these two are like the supporting energies that are pointing towards here. And typically yods mean a point of where you can experience ancestral healing from past trauma. And when we're running a chart or looking at a chart on a bigger scale, like we're running the chart of the moment, of the now, this is the energies of now. So energies in the air, considering the moon, Mars, and Jupiter, is that our emotions, we are going to feel a need to act on our emotions and have this be in an expansive way. So Jupiter is about sovereignty, sorry. He's the king of the gods, the king of the pantheon, and this idea that it's then supported by, you're going to be drawn to it towards gaining, us as a whole are leaning towards gaining inner cosmic sovereignty through inner emotions, through fairness, having a balanced perspective on our emotions, not letting ourselves go off the rails and get overly emotional. And then also using this Mars in Sagittarius, because Sagittarius, I have some gripes with Sagittarius because it's mutable fire, so it can just kind of like, I'm very fixed. So Mars in Sagittarius, I can almost feel like it wants to like go in all directions. And Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so there's this nice affinity here where your emotional drive, what motivates you on a deeper emotional level, is pointing towards where you need to find sovereignty in your life. And where Taurus signifies the body, I would say in your own body and in your own personal temple at home, because the home is also like an extension of the body, which is what Taurus also represents. And Taurus is ruled by Venus too. So that's kind of quick what I just wanted to go over tonight before I get into the fun topic of the moon goddesses, just what the moon is doing right now astrologically, because if you know the stories that also support that, then it kind of makes, it helps to make a little bit more sense. Like if I think of like Jupiter as like Zeus and the moon as Diana and Mars as Aries, you can think about how those energetic thought forms as gods and goddesses, how they would like play out when it comes to, like, let's say you're trying to deal with a decision and you have the three of them sitting down at the table and discussing how to go about it. Think about it that way, in terms of you having all of these different aspects in you and how you would choose to approach a different situation, a problem, or anything like that. So let's go into Mayari, the moon goddess. So the moon, as I said, is the inner child, inner mother. She is there's not very many female luminaries, right? So they've got the moon, we've got Earth, of course, but we also have Venus. And I said I would talk about Venus. Venus in Scorpio is very intense, and oh yeah, because she's cusping. That's why it didn't jump out to me right now. This is even more intense because you're in between signs, but also the level of like justice themes are still there. And remember, these two are sisters. And so that's a great way to jump into what we're going to talk about. I did a little post on my Substack about the Moon Goddess Sisters featuring Mayari, because I have been working away getting my book from, writing book. Like I have this Phoenix book that I have written out the entire book of book 3 of the Dragon Warriors, the Ancient Future Time, but getting that onto like Word doc form. I was like, Marge, where'd it go? So this guy is like getting all this into an actual form that makes sense, and also when you're dealing with time travel and multiple timelines, and then just making sure there's no continuity errors. And I'm trying to get that all ready for those who are in the book to give me their edits for their characters. But we're going to talk about the moon, and the reason why I went to this is because whenever you're writing science fiction, science fantasy, you're building a universe, and so it has to make sense. It has to be built on the meanings of what has come before. That's what helps to make the story grounded in something that everyone can relate to and be like, hey, I can vibe with that. And that's kind of like why there's all of these different types of moon goddesses. And so this is Mayari. I love this rendition of Mayari. So she's a goddess of the moon. And I'm just going to go into, I got this from, what is this called again? This Mythlock. So all of your different myths. And then I'm going to go in through all the other moon goddesses. But for now, let's just go here. Let's make this a little smaller. I'll drop a link to this if you're interested into listening this. Let me see, what does this say? I don't think...
Hi there, I'm the voice from the subway.
Okay, no, there's a commercial. Let's not listen to that. Okay, so Mayari, introduction in Tagalog. So Tagalog is the main dialect in the Phil. Mayari is the goddess of the moon and the daughter of the supreme god Bathala, an immortal woman. So she's actually a demi-goddess as well, which is kind of cool. She is known as the most beautiful of all the goddesses. In one of the Pampagan myths, Mayari and her brother Apolaki fought for the earth's right to rule. During the fight, Mayari lost one of her eyes due to Apoloki's bamboo club. He then asked her for forgiveness and agreed to rule with her at night and during the day. I don't know, that's kind of sad. So she rules the night and he rules the day. They split the time. Her light is dimmer compared to her brother's because of the eye injury. In observance of Mayari, a tradition known as courting of Mayari occurs on the night of a full moon. During this event, a suitor gives a woman a gift known as a sampagutia, I'm sorry for my lack of pronunciation, which she can wear if she accepts the partner as her choice. And the sempukita is a flower. It's a very pretty flower. I'm going to do a little search of it so you can see. This looks like that. The national flower. So on full moons, if you had a suitor, a potential suitor, would come and give you one of these flowers, lovely lady, and just to honor you as the moon goddess, and you could choose to accept. But it's the courting, known as the courting of Mayari. So physical traits of Mayari: she wears a multi-layered, elegant outfit that features vibrant beads and various accessories such as a yantok and a baston with 2 fighting sticks. And despite her soft features, Mayari is considered to be an epitome of strength and beauty, and is also the most beautiful of all the goddesses in the Philippine pantheon of gods. She is also often depicted as being tattooed and having one eye with a scar over with the other. Kind of Odin-y, actually. In Tagalog mythology, Mayari is the daughter of Bathala, who is the supreme creator. She's the sister of Hanan, the deity of the dawn, which is very similar to what Venus is, if you think of morning star, dawning star. Adla, who is the god of the sun, and Tala, the goddess of stars. In some mythology, Tala is Mayari's daughter. In one story, Mayari proposed to Apolaki to rule the land equally. However, Apolaki chose to rule as one. This led to a fierce divine war between the two sides, leading to Apolaki taking out one of Mayari's eyes. You can see some of her renditions here too, like this one. Yeah, that warrior goddess energy from Mayari. Yeah, and like the tattoos, she's got one eye. Badass. That would be definitely a cool cosplay. I think it's the left eye. Right. Okay, so let's see here. In the Philippines, we have the whip. Let's talk about the weapons, actually. Mayari is the goddess of revolutions, war, hunt, weaponry, beauty, strength, moon, and night. She is also the symbol of inner strength and compassion, that has now become synonymous with Filipino women. That's true. Oh, I like that. The weapons that Mayari typically uses are made from bamboo or kamagong woods. She also has a variety of weapons, such as a yangtok, which is a long stick that measures up to 36 inches long, and a blue baston, a short stick about 24 to 28 inches in length. I need to find those sticks. In the Philippines, the use of various weapons such as fighting sticks has been regarded as a part of the martial arts known as eskrima, arnis, or kali. I have some kali knives. Spain prohibited the use of this type of martial art due to its dangerous nature. But despite this, the tribe's people still continue to incorporate the arts into their dances. So that is how they got away with doing these moves that were considered martial arts. They disguised them in war dances, which, oh my gosh, I love that. And because the Spanish didn't want them because it's dangerous, but you can just come in and assimilate people. So all of the sources of Philippine mythology are oral literature, and despite numerous attempts to record all the stories in the country's oral literature, the majority of them have not been properly documented. And so as a result, changes in the stories, this is common too with, like, I find Native American myths as well. It's oral tradition, there's variations. It doesn't make any of them wrong. The addition of new ones are a natural phenomenon and part of the evolving dynamicism, oh my gosh, I can't say that word for some reason, of Philippine mythology. Dynamicism, yeah. The Spanish introduced various Christian myths due to the oral literature during the 16th century, and this was done intentionally to interfere with the development of Philippine mythology. So that's why you don't really know about Mayari that much, and you do have a lot of very devout Christianity in the Philippines because of this all being considered, savage and stuff. So this has been really fun for me to look into the pantheon of gods. And Tala is actually a Filipino restaurant here in Toronto. And Tala is the goddess of the stars. She kind of reminds me a lot of Newt. And it said she sometimes is considered a daughter of Mayari, or she's a sister. But there's also Hanan. And before I get to the other moon goddesses, I'll do a Venus thing later. Morning, dawn. Hanan, the goddess of morning and day, shines brightly in the pantheon of Philippine mythology. Her origins, attributes, and significance are deeply ingrained in the cultural fabric of the Philippines. She represents the eternal cycle of light and darkness, offering hope, warmth, prosperity to those who embrace her radiant presence. And yeah, she's like dark as the night, and she's supposed to be this, it's like me and Ursa, actually, if I think about it. Like golden skin. She's got the star here that she's holding. Love it. Hanan. Let's see here. One popular myth tells of Hanan's eternal quest to save her sister Mayari from the relentless pursuit of Bakunawa, the fearsome moon-eating dragon. Oh my goodness. In this tale, Hanan uses her radiant light to blind Banunawa, temporarily allowing Mayari to escape. So these two sisters look out for each other. This narrative not only showcases Hanan's protective and caring nature, but also highlights the eternal struggle between light and darkness. So that's pretty cool. Something to look into. But I'm not going to spend too much time, because the idea of Venus and her equivalencies and her sisters, that's a whole other story that we can get into. For now, let's now shift gears into moon goddesses throughout the world, a list. And I have this just from Danny Reese. Actually, not too long ago, this was posted or edited, who knows. But let's get into what this list looks like. And just so I have a list, and we can kind of go through what some of the equivalencies are as we go through it. Okay, so first up, Artemis. I like Artemis, and Artemis appears in Sailor Moon. Not to bring up Sailor Moon all the time, but Sailor Moon, Venus, Sailor Venus's cat, Mina's cat, is named Artemis. And Artemis is a boy in this case, but Artemis is a girl as a goddess. So Artemis, I think there's like a cult of Artemis too as well in the ancient world, if I remember. Artemis is one of the most revered and honored of the ancient Greek deities, ruling over hunting, the moon, childbirth, virginity, as well as the wilderness and wild animals. She was also considered protector of young women until they got married. So before they got married, Artemis would make sure that you were protected. Artemis was one of Zeus's many children and went by many different names, including the Roman name Diana. So Diana is the Roman name for Artemis, and they are both equivalencies to the moon. Apollo, the sun god, was her twin brother, who was associated with the sun, and gradually her brother's female counterpart, Artemis, became associated with the moon. Now, her function and depiction varied from culture to culture. She's also she's the moon goddess, but this is also related to how wildlife and nature and like the wild woman is also related to lunar deities, because this is also association between like the nymphs in forests and mountains and marshes. So this idea of being like free and like naked and dancing in the woods under the full moonlight, that's all like Artemis kind of stuff. Okay, so Bendis, I don't know this goddess, the goddess of moon and hunting in Tracia, the ancient kingdom which spread across parts of present-day Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey. She is associated with Artemis and Persephone by the ancient Greeks. Ceridwen or Ceridwen? Welsh folklore and mythology, and yeah, I have some Welsh background but my maiden name being Walton. She was the Celtic goddess associated with inspiration, fertility, and wisdom. And these traits are often linked to the moon and the female intuitive energy. So I could see that if we think of intuition and when you get inspired by something, yeah, you can have that be associated with the moon. And so that's Welsh folklore. Ooh. She was also considered a powerful enchantress and the keeper of the magic cauldron. Is there like a specific one magic cauldron versus? Okay, someone will look. Little note on that. And the source of beauty, wisdom, inspiration, transformation, and rebirth. She's often portrayed as one aspect of the Celtic triple goddess. Yes, the three. Where Saradwen, I need to figure out how to actually say this. Someone who's Welsh, tell me. She's considered the crone or the wise one. Blodeuwedd is the maiden and Arianrhod is the mother. However, as the majority of Celtic female deities, she embodies all three aspects of the triad within herself. Triple goddess energy. Def. And just like the moon is all of her phases, but still the moon as well. That's that same kind of energy, I do believe. Chanje, Chinese goddess. According to Chinese literature and mythology, Chanje or Chango was the beautiful Chinese goddess of the moon. According to legend, Chang'e tried to escape from her husband, Lord Archer. So there's an archer involved with the moon, notice that? Hu Yi, after he found out that she stole the magical potion of immortality from him. She found refuge on the moon where she lived with a hare. And that's where we get bunnies. There's this thing about bunnies living on the moon. And then also if you think about Ostara, it was associated with Isis, and it's interesting how those motifs all kind of relate. And Sailor Moon Usagi translates to white rabbit. Every year in August, the Chinese celebrate a mid-autumn festival in her honor, and during the full moon of the festival, it's customary to make mooncakes, eat them, or share them with friends and family. It's believed that a toad's silhouette on the moon represents the goddess, and many go outside to marvel at its appearance. Nice. Oh my gosh. Koyolakui, meaning pained with bells, was the Aztec female deity of the Milky Way and the moon. And according to Aztec mythology, the goddess was killed and dismembered by Aztec god of war. Oh, that sucks. Jeez. Aztecs, so like... This story was recorded on the enormous stone monolith found at the Great Temple base in today's Mexico City, featuring a dismembered and naked female figure. Oh, wow. Why did they do that to her? She wanted to remain on the mythical Snake Mountain, disrupting the god's plan to settle in the new territory. This upset the god of war, who decapitated her and ate her heart. Oh my gosh. I feel like there's like consequences for that. Anyways, poor moon goddess. Next, Diana is the Roman counterpart of the Greek Artemis, and although there's substantial cross-reference between the two deities, the Roman Diana has developed into a distinct and separate deity in Italy over time. And just like Artemis, Diana was originally associated with hunting and wildlife, just to later become the main lunar deity. And in the feminist Wiccan tradition, Diana is honored as the moon's personification and the sacred feminine energy. In classical artwork, this deity is depicted wearing a crescent moon-shaped crown. This relates Diana to Isis quite a bit, like the lunar queen thing going on. And if you think about the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians, there's a lot of cross-pollination of those stories. So Hecate. According to Greek mythology, Hecate is the lunar goddess most commonly associated with moon, magic, witchcraft, and the night creatures such as ghosts and hellhounds. It's believed that she had powers over all the earth, of all of the realms, the sea, the earth, and heaven. Hecate's a very magical goddess. Definitely. Hecate is depicted holding a burning torch as a reminder of her association with the darkness and night. Some say she used the torch to find Persephone, who was abducted and taken to the underworld. In later depictions, she was portrayed as having 3 bodies or faces positioned back to back, facing all directions to represent her duty as the guardian of doorways and crossroads. This is quite important. When you have like a fork in the road, or like you're passing a doorway, and I guess it's like the idea of going somewhere unknown and like creating that new path, and path appearing in front of you. Interesting here too, like the association with Persephone, because you typically think of Demeter as being that, but this having directions and the idea of the fall, I could see there being some associations there too. Isis, my girl. Yeah, see, like the lunar queen, or the sun, right? In Egyptian mythology, Isis, meaning the throne, was the moon goddess associated with life, healing, and magic. She is considered the protector of the sick, women, and children. She is the wife and sister of Osiris, and they had a child named Horus. And she was definitely one of the most prominent deities of ancient Egypt. Isis assumed all the functions of all other important female deities over time. With some of her most important functions and duties included matrimonial devotion, so wife, goddess energy, devoted wife, protection of childhood and womanhood, as well as healing of the sick. She is also believed to be the most potent enchantress, mastering the workings of magical charms and spells. She's a great friend to Thoth, so there's that. Isis was the divine embodiment of a perfect mother and wife, and often depicted as a beautiful woman wearing a cow's horns with a lunar disc between them. Yeah. There's more to come with Isis, because I do work with Isis and I love her a lot. Luna, like, oh my gosh, just like the cat, just like the ears. Yeah, Luna the cat was a lunar goddess and divine personification of the moon. It is believed, so this is Roman, so I wonder how this Luna plays with Diana. It is believed that Luna was the female counterpart of the sun god Sol. Luna is often represented as a separate deity, but still sometimes she's considered as like to be the one aspect of the triple goddess in Roman mythology called Diva Treformis, together with Hecate and Proserpina. Okay, so there we go. That's the triple goddess there of the Roman mythology. And Luna is often associated with a variety of lunar attributes, including the blue moon, instinct, creativity, femininity, and the element of water. So there's also, I noticed with moon is water as well, because if you even look at like the moon and what they've named a lot of things on the moon, a lot of landmarks like the Sea of Eternity and things after Endymion, it's interesting. Also here, she's the patroness and protector of charioteers and travelers, so traversing realms. You want to think of lunar goddesses changing states as being a guardian of that. Mama Quila, also called Mama Killa, can be translated to Mother Moon. She is the Incan, so from Inca, lunar deity. According to Incan mythology, Mama Quila was the offspring of the Incan supreme creator god, called Viracocha, and their sea goddess Mama Cocha. The Incas believed that the dark patches of the moon's surface occurred because of the love between a goddess and a fox. Hey, hear that, Wolfie? When the fox rose to the heavens to be with his lover, Mama Quila embraced him so close that it created these dark spots. They also believed that a lunar eclipse was a bad omen, caused by a lion trying to attack and swallow the goddess. So it's the lunar eclipse, and this is when the earth is actually in between the radiance of the sun and the moon. So interesting. Mama Quila was considered to be a protector of women and marriages. The Incas used the moon's travel across the sky to create their calendar and measure their time passage. The goddess had a temple dedicated to her in the city of Cuzco in Peru, which is the capital of the ancient Incan Empire. Interesting, yeah. So this whole temple, like the lunar years as well, right? Because we are approaching the Chinese New Year of the Dragon coming up, which is going to dovetail quite nicely with me launching the Dragon Warriors saga. But it's important to also note that the Chinese New Year is considered a lunar New Year. So there's, of course, that monthly cycle, the 28 days or so every month. But then there's like a whole year of understanding the full cycle of that yearly cycle. And so that is something to kind of consider here as well, that it's almost as if certain cultures have leveraged more of the moon to tell their time or classify certain things in terms of traveling and things like that. Mawu, moving on to the next goddess of the moon, according to the Fon people of Abomi. Oh, speaking of Africans, Mawu is the African creator goddess associated with the moon. The Fon people believe that Mawu was the moon's embodiment responsible for cooler temperatures and the night in Africa. She's also commonly depicted as an old wise woman and a mother who lives in the West, representing old age and wisdom. And also it's always like a brother, the sun and moon tend to be brother and sister. And because they come from the same creator, same parents, that's why. Mawu is married to her twin brother, an African sun god called Liza. It's believed that together they created Earth, using their sun goo as the holy tool and shaping everything out of clay. It's an interesting creation myth. The Fon people believe that the moon or the solar eclipse is the time when Liza and Mawu make love. So the solar eclipse. They're believed to be the parents of 14 children, or 7 twin pairs. Mawu is also considered to be the female deity of joy, fertility, and of rest. I like you a lot. I like all those 3 things. Next lunar goddess, we have Rhiannon. Celtic, yes, definitely sounds Celtic. Look, I like this picture actually. Rhiannon is also known as the Night Queen and the Celtic goddess of fertility, magic, wisdom, rebirth, beauty, transformation, poetry, and inspiration. She is most commonly associated with death, the night, the moon, as well as horses and otherworldly singing birds. Because of her connection to horses, she's sometimes associated with the Gaulish horse goddess Epona and the Irish goddess Macha. In Celtic mythology, so I noticed this with runes in Viking mythology and Norse mythology. There's a huge importance on horses, and I love horses. And because of the freedom that horses offer, that horses were like changed the game when it came to traveling as well, right? And also that connection between man and horse, woman and horse when you're riding that horse as well. Let's see here. In Celtic mythology, she was initially called Regatona, who was the Celtic great queen and mother, and therefore Rhiannon is at the center of 2 different Gaulish cults, celebrating her as both the horse goddess and the mother goddess. So that's an interesting association. I just feel like there's a thing too, like girls love horses. It's like a thing. It's a thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Next, Selene. I like Selene. In Greek mythology, Selene was the Titan lunar goddess representing the moon, and she's the daughter of 2 other Titan deities, Thea and Hyperion. She has one brother, the sun god Helios. Yes, there's different sun gods here in Greek. It's interesting because you have Apollo and you have Helios, and I would be interested just to look through like the the distinctions between the two, because I know Apollo is very much associated, like Apollonian oracles are also associated with Apollo and not necessarily with Helios. Helios has that whole story with his son who wanted to drive the chariot of the sun, but he wasn't ready, and so the horses could tell that he was an inexperienced rider, so they just ran off with him and screwed him up. There's a story there. There's a lesson there, of course. Let's see here. Selene is usually depicted as sitting in her moon chariot, so there's a chariot here, and riding across the night sky and heavens. And although she's a distinct deity, she's sometimes associated with two other moon goddesses, such as Artemis and Hecate, of course. And however, while Artemis and Hecate were considered moon goddesses, Selene was thought to be the moon's okay, so that's it. So maybe that's the same thing with Helios. Excuse me. Selene was thought to be the moon's incarnation itself. So the embodiment of that energy. And her Roman counterpart was Luna. So Luna and Selene are more of just like the embodiment of the moon as that luminary incarnate. I could see that as opposed to it being like the thought form aspect of what's symbolized by the moon. I feel like it's a slight distinction, but it's a distinction nonetheless. Yolkai Astan. According to Native American mythology, Yolkai Astan was the moon deity of the Navajo tribe. It was believed that her sister and the sky goddess Yolkai made her out of an abalone shell. Oh, that's crazy. So that abalone shell, so her sister made her. And therefore, she was also known as the white shell woman. That is a cool story. Yolkai Istan, and this is actually also related to the Philippine story where there's that relationship between the two sisters, one being, in this case, the sky goddess or the dawn goddess or the star goddess, and the sisters either creating each other or helping each other or saving each other in some sort of way, just the way it's supposed to be between us soul star sisters, right? For Native Americans, Yolkai Astan was the ruler and protector of the oceans and of the dawn, as well as the creator of maize, which is corn, and fire. And they believed that the moon goddess created the first men out of white corn and women out of yellow corn. That's fun. It's interesting. And so that's the last one of this list. And I agree with this blog article in terms of how she said that there's multiple moon goddesses throughout cultures, and you'll find that like the creator god in the Filipino mythology, Batal, if you look at images of him, he just looks like a really tattooed Filipino Zeus kind of creator sky god. And you could just see how, like, when pre-colonialism, when the Philippines had more of like these tribal stories, these oral traditions, more of this connection to the earth goddess energy, before you had this much more, I don't want to say it's just patriarchy, because it's not just that, because if you notice, a lot of the lunar goddesses are also goddesses of war, and goddesses love warriors. And so that connection of that is that it's because warriors can protect them so that they can do their magic stuff undisturbed by all these other things, and they can hold, like, your warriors can hold the line for you. Not to say that we can't be strong and fight, but it's about having your counter, your equal, your son, God at your back, your twin flame, to, like, so that both together create this circuit. I think other things about lunar goddesses to pay attention to is what phase of the moon you're embodying in this particular role or in this particular lifetime. So bringing it back to the chart just one last time before we wrap up this live stream all about moon goddesses around the world. If you love this content, I'm going to be doing this every Wednesday, doing a feature on different goddesses for Warrior Goddess Wednesday, and we'll be doing lives for Truth, Beauty, Freedom, and Love on Fridays, and then Sundays we'll do the Sunday night Astro Sex Show. So that's going to be the live streaming schedule. But if you want to be up to date on all of that, make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you are also subscribed to the mailing list for Golden Sugar, so that you are up to date with all of the events that are happening there, such as like cosmic astro parties or any of our events that are coming up with Mr. DJ Golden Era, as well as any very specific playlists as I learned to DJ with his tutelage. And we put together a lot more curated journeys through space-time. And so if we even think of the moon as being many of the goddesses are patron goddesses of travel, because if you think about the moon in phases, and the moon is also related to, I don't think like we realize how mental emotions are. Sometimes we think like emotion, like, oh my gosh, like heartbreak, right? Heartbreak's not the same as being upset or jealous because your lover did something to hurt you. You're not heartbroken because someone you love did something that annoyed you. That's all like emotional, right? It can play a little bit with what you're feeling in your heart, but I think what's important is for the moon and your Venus and your sun, and actually like all of them, all of the aspects of you, to get to know each other, and what version of themselves are they playing out in you right now, and then how does that then interact with other people's moon signs. And it seems complicated, but it's really not, because all of that intel, it's very sophisticated and complex the way our innate organic technology functions. It kind of knows all of these things without us having to know it. Like with astro, especially, like a big thing for me was when I learned about moon signs, as I found out that my moon sign was in Gemini, and I was like, I had to deal with a lot of my own self-judgment on that because of how I even viewed Geminis, and just being, like the shadow side. But every sign has a shadow side, and even if we think about the moon in all of her phases, like she's a waning moon right now in Libra, so if you're born under this type of moon, it's going to have, of course, a very different energy than if you're born on a full moon in a different sign too. Or even if you were born a full moon in this exact same spot, it's going to have a different energy. So I think it's just important to note that we are all of them, and sometimes the things in others that annoy us, or they're just things in ourselves that we have to kind of accept or resolve, or like aspects within ourselves that fight against each other that we can learn to deal with and transmute, and have these kind of like thought experiments. And even more fun when you have friends and loved ones around you who you can play out these things in real life, right? And that's kind of like where synastry comes into play, because it can help to give some clues and some intel. Like you can look at what your moon sign looks like in relationship to their sun sign, and because that's a very powerful connection. If your deeper emotional world, if there's like a connection between your moon and anything else, even if the moon opposes, because this is like the thing about opposing signs, that there's also like commonalities between the two, and in those similarities we find understanding. In the where the difference is, where the duality is where there's similarities, right? Because the sun and moon are like opposite, right? One is like day and one is night, but they're very similar. Like they're associated with each other. It's not like say like the sun and, well, you could say that about anything, I guess, in relationship, but specifically things that are in duality with each other. We talk about this when we look at analysis of like English literature. The foils, you are able to describe and understand something better because of the contrast between something else. And so in that contrast, you're able to find a better realization. Like when you paint, the brights and whites look so much brighter because you have shadow, and where the light is coming from, where the shadow is how you end up with a form. You need to have the contrast. So that is, I think, where I will end this show, this Warrior Goddess Wednesday live stream show today, where we learned all about the different moon goddesses of the world, with a special focus on Mayari, my girl, the Filipino moon goddess, the demi goddess, the demi warrior goddess. She's got this wonderful image too of like her as an archer with the moon behind her, and like tattoos, and just this wonderful, beautiful vibe of it. And so I urge all of you out there to lean into your own chart, your own mythologies, your own sacred star stories. Find out where each of these beautiful stories and aspects live within you, and where you can find your own personal power through these stories to express out what you need to express in this game of life, in this existence. And so with that, starseeds, I hope you have a beautiful one wherever you reside in the cosmos. Until next time, in the next video.